Hi everyone, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about cloning. Now, there's a lot of people who outsource this kind of thing, but on the whole it's actually probably more easy to do than you might think, and if you just give it a try perhaps you'll see how simple it is to do. So this image here, I mean there's nothing wrong with that image per se. This was in a stairwell at a wedding I photographed recently, and the original image looks like this. So, there's nothing wrong with it. It could stay like that, but I find these bright areas quite distracting. And this was another one of those photographs where it was just kind of, I did see this staircase earlier on and I thought about using it, but I hadn't kind of planned it into the day. And this was a moment where the guests were being seated for the wedding breakfast and we had just 5 minutes or so. So I tried some frames with this. I did a few. Not all of them worked particularly well, and it's one of these where it had a lot of potential, and if I'd thought about it a bit more, or maybe planned it a bit better, then I could have worked on the composition and the way that the couple were lying here. So I took a few frames. There's some here, you can see them. I mean, that's not too bad. The expressions aren't particularly great. I liked that one a bit better. And I would have preferred it if she'd had her flowers, her bouquet with her as well. It would have made more sense than this hand just dangling there. So there's a few of them. But this one here, because this kind of thing is kind of attention grabbing and will probably go on a blog or portfolio, then it's maybe worth a little bit more time. So what I did was I just edited that floor in to those white spaces, and you know what, it wasn't that difficult. I'm going to basically just show you how I started off and do some of it just so you can see. So when you're cloning in Photoshop, these are the tools over here. So there's the clone stamp, pattern stamp, but there's also these ones here which are a bit more intuitive: patch tool, healing brush tool, spot healing brush. So the spot healing brush is very easy to use. It's quite intuitive. You just kind of hover it over a spot and it works out where the spot is. It samples from the surrounding area and it fixes that automatically. The healing brush is a similar kind of thing, and basically you can do anything with the spot healing brush or the healing brush, as well as the patch tool. The content aware move tool is similar to the patch tool as well. Red eye, we don't tend to use that so much anymore, but we've got this little sign here. And I'm on the spot healing brush, so potentially the spot healing brush might be able to get rid of that. So there you go, that's not too bad. It's quite intuitive. You just have to make sure you haven't got any kind of repeating patterns. When you sample the area, it's not kind of overlapping other parts of the image. So spot healing brush would get rid of that, no problem. Patch tool perhaps would do the same. So the patch tool stops at the edge of the image. There is a way to override that though, if it's not working. I can't remember which button it is, let me see. Alt. So if you hold down the Alt or the Option key, you can go off the edge of the image. If that sometimes that helps, so you can go round there like that. And then we're going to move. Oh, I think it overrides it anyway, but patch tool does a decent job, and then you kind of repatch little bits if you've got lines. So patch tool is very simple to use, so that's good for that kind of thing. You can't really spot heal these areas, so this is more of a cloning job. But again, it's relatively straightforward because this is quite a uniform area to clone. So I'm just going to go to the regular clone stamp tool. And when you're cloning areas of kind of uniformity, then it's best to have it on 100% opacity, 100% flow, and then you're going to keep all the detail and it's going to look right. So there are a few settings. You can have soft brush, hard brush, whatever you want to use. I use sample current layer because I haven't been working on different layers, but you can use all layers, current layer, and I keep it aligned. So what that means is when I sample, now to sample you hold the Alt or the Option key. I think it's the Option key. If it's not, try the other ones. So you sample by holding down the Alt key, clicking, and then you can move. And basically, if you see the little crosshair where I've sampled from, that moves at the same time as the brush, so it moves along. And what I've done there is I've sampled from where there's a line, so this helps me to line up. So I sample from where there's a break in the floorboards here, sample from there, and when I line up there and I click and I hold the mouse down, then it's going to stay like that all the way across, and hopefully it's going to line up with all the other boards. And then all I need to do is reduce the brush size to get into these corners, and because this area here is slightly out of focus, I don't need to be hugely accurate with that. Just going around there. I mean, this is for demonstration purposes, but the other thing is, you know, when you're doing this kind of thing, you have to maybe consider that people aren't really going to be looking that closely at this part of the image. And even if I were to go over the corner of that kind of metal handrail post or whatever you call it, it doesn't really matter. So one thing that I'm considering is that the softness of this edge here is similar to the softness of the brush in terms of how in or out of focus that area was. So just going around there carefully. I'm just using a mouse here. I do occasionally use a pen. I have a Wacom Bamboo, which I hook up to the computer occasionally. But I kind of like using the mouse, especially when using certain opacity levels, and you can work out how many clicks is kind of 10% opacity, and you can add on that kind of thing. So it gets a little bit more tricky over here, and there's this floorboard here which is a bit darker than the rest, so just need to make sure that goes all the way down. So just kind of clicking across there, and it will resample what was originally under there. So if you let go of the mouse, the other thing is, once you've done a bit, it's good practice to let go of the mouse, because if you did loads, let's just say we did all of this and all of this, and we went down here and we were doing that and that and here, and then all of a sudden you kind of went over a bit you didn't want to go over like that, and you pressed Control and Z to undo. You have to undo that, but best thing is to do little bits at a time. Then you're not going to, if you have to undo, it's only going to be a small amount. So the same thing is, let's just say I want to do this fiddly bit in here, so I'm going to sample from, I've already sampled, but let's just sample again, and I want a small brush. If I sample from there and then go down to here, if my brush is small, it's difficult to see where it's going to line up sometimes. So if you make the brush big, line it up, then make the brush really small, and then you know it's all. So to make the brush bigger and smaller, I'm using the bracket keys on the square bracket left and right. That's what you can hear clicking, bigger and smaller, left and right bracket keys. So I'm clicking, making the brush bigger, making the brush smaller as I go through. So similar kind of thing with these stairs here. So you know, something needs to go there. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample about here on this line. I'm going to make sure that lines up, so I'm going to make the brush a bit bigger just to make sure that all lines up. I'm going to hold the mouse still, make the brush smaller again, and I'm going to brush into these parts, and this is going to go all the way over here. Same with this, onto there. And then it just appears that that stair has gone all the way through into that area. So yeah, this following the grain of this wood here. And yeah, this kind of thing is not a quick job, but you know, if a picture is worth it, if you think it's going to get a lot of attention, if you think it's going to perhaps increase the amount of bookings that you might get at a certain venue, which is a big thing really, then it may be that this is worth your time to do this kind of thing. So that's a few bits and bobs from there, and I think I did the same here just to get rid of these white bits in the corner. So clicking on the line, making the brush bigger to line it up here, and then just kind of brushing through. Getting rid of those repeating patterns as well. This area is even more out of focus, so a bigger brush with a softer edge is absolutely fine. Just to extend that. Same again over here. And again, you know, this is right in the corner of the image, and probably will get darkened down at some point, so don't need to be too fussy on there. So that's the process really, and I'd go around the edges with a smaller brush. I'd take it a good 5 to maybe 10 minutes of fiddly stuff, but maybe it's worth it. Who knows? So there's the finished image, and I've darkened down the edges a little bit there as well. Hope you found that useful. Any other questions about cloning, give us a shout. And you know, next time you have a cloning job, if you are struggling with it, send it over to me and I can certainly take a look. But surely try these things yourself before outsourcing them. You probably find that they are easier than they appear.